Smo.com live before oh boy, forget the name up front. The live before lock show. I'm so frazzled by the 13 game slate, I can't even remember the name of the show that we do every single day. But I'm Chris Spags, joined by the man whose brain you're going to want today, the mind of a genius on the other side there. Fast Eddie Fair. How are you doing, Eddie?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. I am really been working from the second I woke up today to this just to kind of process everything. A lot of late breaking news, a lot of interesting stuff. We are going to get to that real fast. One quick thing, just to keep your eyes peeled, guys. We're doing some big Black Friday, Cyber Monday deals. The codes will be on every show we have on our channels, the podcast, every YouTube show. So keep your eyes peeled starting Friday. We're going to be giving those out. They're the biggest deals we've ever had on our all access passes for both monthly members and yearly members. So go keep an eye out for that. We'll be back with them. But it's a big deal. So we just want to make sure you guys are aware in case you were thinking about buying a package in the next couple of days. Eddie, we got so much news. What are you finding to be the key news items people should be aware of when building lineups?
I think the Atlanta big situation is relevant. Again, you have no Poitras, no Spellman, no Len. So this is a team that can run small and does run deep like a submarine. But they're obviously well short on bigs now, and Dwayne Dedmon's playing time is going to be largely limited just by his foul capacity. So especially DK, where you can pick him up for 4,200 and basically get a third center in because he is power forward / center eligible. He ends up being a tremendous play. And I don't hate John Collins. The usage will come up a little bit here. They said about 25 minutes. I'll go ahead and put my I'm going to guess he gets 26. I'm going to throw it out there. But seriously, he's played Toronto several times last year, maybe got 4 games, and looked absolutely adequate dealing with Ibaka a fair amount of that time. And it's just a very, very good fantasy per minute basketball player. So center only on DK is tough at 4,800. Power forward on FanDuel 5,100 still isn't brilliant, but certainly should crack some tournament lineups at this point. And I think that's the single piece of news that I find most compelling as far as messing with the slate. CJ Miles is out. OG Anunoby is out.
Does that affect anything for you there?
Yeah, it makes Pascal Siakam a very, very strong play. It makes Fred VanVleet at least a very legitimate tournament play. It makes me think Delon Wright is in play at $3,600 on DK. Makes me like Lowry even a little bit more. I mean, talking about Kyle Lowry, there have been 5 games this year where Kawhi Leonard didn't play. And not always, again, in... such a stellar matchup as this one, but Kawhi out, obviously a better chance of keeping the game closer, them being a little less deep, keeping the game closer. And then if you look at those games for Lowry without Kawhi this year, you had 29 minutes, 35 fantasy points, 29 minutes, 47, 33 minutes, 60, 34 minutes, 43, and 35 minutes, 55. The usage comes up a solid 5 or 6 points. The matchup is obviously incredible. The games in Atlanta, which we like, there's still a real chance they absolutely demolish them. This is an incredibly deep team. But, like Pascal Siakam, a fair amount at this point. He has put up 50 burgers, and there's really no better spot for him to do so in this point. But he and Kyle Lowry, very, very strong. Lowry was already fairly strong, but even a little bit more so now.
Oh, yeah. I'm with you completely on Lowry. I like Ibaka. I guess, well, the Anunoby news does affect it a little bit. I like Ibaka more than Siakam. I think he's $300 cheaper on DK. And I think Ibaka's per minutes are a little better. I don't know. If you had to make a choice, who would you go with between Ibaka and Siakam?
In this particular spot, wow, it's really close to both. Everyone looks good against Atlanta.
Mm-hmm. It's hard not to.
I really don't know. They both look absolutely stellar. You are saving the 300 beans on DK, which does a fair amount for you. And then on FanDuel, I believe you're saving on Pascal. No, Pascal's 7,500 on FanDuel. They're not messing around there. So 400 cheaper on FanDuel. So it really comes down to an ownership question for me there. Just as far as like raw ceiling, I actually like Siakam a little bit more. So if they were similarly owned, I would be a little more inclined towards paying up for Siakam. But both very, very strong plays at this point.
Let's see, where is Siakam? Oh, Siakam, one of the chalkiest plays on the slate on DraftKings at 19% projected by our ownership at Osmo.com. Promo code live before lock if you want to get that for free. He's 19%. Ibaka 6% right now.
Interesting. Well, then at that point, certainly, I think I would go to Ibaka. We have seen some big games out of Ibaka. A couple of them. I guess the Lakers, he had a really big game where he can just take over, get more involved in the usage. Does tend to get a pickup either without Lowry or without Leonard like this. So at that point, I would rather play Ibaka and save $300 or $400 and get him at lower ownership at that point, because you can pull 50 out of him as well. Slightly less safe than Pascal is just going to play through different positions and get all the time he can handle.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think some exposure to both guys definitely makes sense. And Fred VanVleet as well, a guy you mentioned briefly. I think he looks good too now that we know that there's some openings in that lineup. And it's a matchup versus Atlanta, like you said. I do think Atlanta keeps it close, and I'm a little more bullish on John Collins than you think, or than you seem like you were.
I like John Collins a lot. So I mean,
okay, okay, good.
Not as much as say Deadman, who I think is on DK at least
Yes.
sort of a windmill slam, and at 5,000 on FanDuel. That's just fine. I mean, there's a lot of great center plays tonight, and you're obviously, sucking up falling just raw massive points pretty far off the leaders there. And you can get guys like Ayton, who still carries a big ceiling for only 7,000. Guys like that make it a little tougher to go all the way down to 5 for him there. And obviously there's Miles Turner could certainly get there for you, or Tristan Thompson, or even Jonas, but certainly on DK at that price. Actually, a guy I was talking about yesterday, and who had a very nice game for his 4,000 at 5% owned. So, yeah.
Yeah, just a lot of usage for John Collins so far, and that should trickle down with being on the court with Trae Young and Bazemore and Prince and those guys. But I don't know. I just like what I've seen so far from him so far, and I think the rebounding too we really haven't seen yet, and that's something he can also really rack up fast, especially with a somewhat depleted and slow-footed team on the other side, I think, relative to Collins.
No, I think that's a point well taken.
Let's talk. So we should talk about this Pelicans Sixers game, but real fast. You might notice some stuff on the screen there. We are being presented by Thrive Fantasy, exciting new app that does player props, basically a DFS approach to player props for lineups. We are going to talk about a couple of picks throughout the show, just two, but you guys should be aware, because when you're building your bankroll, using sites that are very generous with promo codes and stuff like that, or just promos in general, rather, is a good way to build that bankroll. Thrive Fantasy is offering an instant match on any deposit, so you don't have to wait. It's not a trickle-out thing. They have a $10 bonus for a $10 deposit, $20 for $100, and $50 if you put $200 down there. So go to bit.ly/ThriveLBL. We're going to put the code in the YouTube chat right now, but go to bit.ly/ThriveLBL to capitalize, so make sure you click that link appropriately. But yeah, it's a great product that we're going to be working with a lot now. There's going to be stuff on the NBA Strategy Show, and new fantasy apps are the best way to win money. Eddie, I'm sure you've had some experience with new apps and making some killings on those.
Oh, absolutely. When I was, and I might actually be allowed to play on that.
Ooh,
come to think
get
of
in
it.
the mix.
I don't know. It depends how everything is classified, but yeah, I used to be playing on 7 or 8 different things a day when they were available. We talk a lot, but any advice we give is generally going to be not as valuable as overlay, and frequently on new sites, between them giving you promotions and discounts and deposit bonuses and contest overlaying and stuff, you can just end up, as opposed to most contests you play on FanDuel and DraftKings, every dollar they take in, they're going to kick back 84 or 85 cents. If you're on a different site, every dollar they take in, they're going to kick back $1.10 or $1.20 is an absolute preposterous difference relative to anything else you might do. So yeah, certainly, a lot of people made a lot of money for a lot of years on DraftKings when they were building their name. They used overlays marketing as a strategy, and there were just times that they just overlaid 10-20% every day for a season, and it was pretty incredible. So certainly something worth looking out and seeing if you can grab some extra cheddar that way.
Yeah, so let's use that as a prism to talk about this game. They have one player prop going right now. Joel Embiid versus Anthony Davis for who's going to score more points. Joel Embiid actually getting 1.5 points, so Anthony Davis would have to outscore him by 1.5 to win this prop bet. I have Embiid straight away projected to score more points. I just think there's more usage for him, obviously, throughout just every game. There's not as many bigs just gunning as there are in the Pelicans. What do you think about Joel Embiid versus Davis, and who would you say just puts up more straight scores?
Now, when you're talking about, if I take Joel Embiid, I'm talking about just points, not fantasy points, not whatever, just basketball
regular
points.
old points.
And I'm giving 1.5 to Anthony Davis.
You're getting 1.5 from Anthony Davis.
They have Anthony Davis projected 1.5 higher.
Yep.
Oh, I would actually pretty easily take Embiid there. I was thinking about it the other way.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
actually surprised that you would get a point and a half on
yeah,
that.
I'm right. I thought you were saying it the other way, and I'm like, yeah, I think I have to go with Anthony Davis there, but they're very, very close to me. You give me Embiid with a point and a half. Yeah, I'll take Embiid. Like I still think Embiid puts up more real points. I would say with their actual fantasy points, I would have a little bit closer. But Embiid is doing his 32 and 12 thing pretty damn regularly here. These guys have only played each other once, if I recall correctly, in the full-grown Joel Embiid era of this last year. And Embiid looked better in that matchup. I recall him limiting Anthony Davis reasonably significantly, and I think he can handle that. And there's just other spots if I'm the Pellies I'm looking to attack here. So yeah, I would on that prop I would take Joel Embiid for especially gaining a point and a half. So yeah, I'm in.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Embiid and Davis met once last year. Embiid put up 24 points and 16 boards. It's a nice little showing by him in just 23 minutes.
Yeah, he was. I remember looking at that going, no, he belongs here. Like that was a big statement game for me where I'm like, yeah, that guy absolutely belongs on the court. So yeah, that's fun. I love me a good prop bet. My last boss, when we were working over at fanvice.com, I used to help win some money at a different site with similar prop betting structure. They just make some mistakes sometimes, and you can get some good value there. So that's exciting.
Yeah, I think the fact we're getting a point and a half there is good. So yeah, go hit that link, bit.ly/ThriveLBL. That's ThriveLBL, and it'll take you there. Or just download the app on the iTunes store. But we get credit if you go to that link, so click that link. What else do you think about the studs tonight? We got a ton of studs and a ton of interesting spots. You got LeBron, you got Westbrook, and a matchup versus a depleted Warriors squad. You got Durant, who's been kind of meandering around, I guess is the best way to put it. Which studs do you like the most?
That's tough to say. There's plenty of studs to like here tonight. So obviously most of the NBA in action, and only 4 teams not throwing it out there. At their relative prices, I like Russell Westbrook a lot. I think relative to ownership, he's probably my favorite of those top 7 mega studs. We'll draw the line at, say, Durant. So you have Durant, Westbrook, Harden, Embiid, Giannis, LeBron, and Brow. So yeah, those guys. It ends up being a little site dependent. So if they were the same price, it ends up being very close for me with, say, Anthony Davis and Giannis and even Joel Embiid. But on FanDuel, where you have to go all the way up to 12-2 for Brow, he's maybe one of my least favorite, or my least favorite of those 7 guys would be him or Harden, I suppose, who Chris Paul is in. The matchup isn't exceptional. People have been saying there is no upside for him in that spot. That's not true. Again, they don't get on the court against Detroit very often, but he's hit ceiling games. One of those was without Paul, but just raw points per dollar, Harden would end up being on the bottom of the line there. Durant is just not going to shoot that badly forever. It's just what that comes down to. He's just shot really poorly, and he's a guy who can shoot a basketball fairly well, you may have heard. So I do think that turns around at a certain point. I don't know how much motivation we ascribe to, OKC coming to town and his old partner in crime, Russ across the court, but certainly don't mind having those 2 guys stacked together if that fits into your lineup construction. But yeah, the studs are all reasonably well. I mean, they're all in very fine spots where you look at them and think, okay, this guy's probably going to get me 50, 55, and they have some ceiling on top of that. At the extra value, Davis faces a real challenge to actually get there, but has started to take more of a sort of commanding role in this offense. LeBron, again, coming back into town. I don't like him playing on the Lakers as much as I have liked him playing on either the Heat or the Cavs, just generically. And he's a year older and a couple more mouths to feed. The minutes are down a little bit, but Cleveland's about as good of a matchup as you're going to get without even getting into narratives and stuff. So hard not to like LeBron there. Giannis
usage is off the chain recently.
Yeah, just has really taken that kind of role, which I don't think sustains. Again, I call me crazy, but as this year goes into January, February, March, I think you have LeBron putting up a lot of 40 to 50s and less 50 to 60s. Like I think those numbers stay down. We'll talk about that one in 4 months or something. Portland sometimes does a decent job with Giannis. Sometimes they struggle to keep him under wraps. So it isn't. It's not a great matchup, but it's not one of those against the Spurs or the Warriors or teams where he's just been really difficult for him to get there. Giannis is not unguardable compared to some other guys in this league, which is funny. You talk about these mega studs. Like, Westbrook can get his if he wants it. Harden can get his if he wants it. There are teams that can reasonably well stop Giannis still. It's not easy, but there are specific spots he's weak. If you manage to keep him out of transition, you can do enough stuff to at least make his life more difficult than you can some of these other guys. Like Anthony Davis, again, I don't like the matchup with Embiid, but such an amazing player in every aspect of the game with handles and shots and defensive stats and even starting to pick up assists this year, and just he's so good. Like, if I saw 90 out of Anthony Davis tonight, I wouldn't blow my socks back. But if I saw it out of Giannis, I'd be a little more surprised. But again, has managed to put up a couple games at least into the 60s against Portland in the last couple of years. And again, these are pretty similar Portland teams, so yeah, there's not a ton to add here with what's generally around in sort of the zeitgeist on the mega studs tonight. So it's and you know, it's worth pointing out there's not that much great value. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not one of those situations where we have, you know, 3K guy or 3,500 guy we expect to give us 30 or 35. Like, when everyone's all up on, you know, Wilson Chandler's and David Nwaba's, and like, there's a lot of, you know, a lot of the value is a little specious, as we say. So, and a lot of the mid-price guys, as obviously is going to happen when you have 26 teams playing, are either underpriced or in great spots or both. So I'm a little more inclined towards balanced lineups here, which, you know, feels interesting when, again, you have all these mega studs going.
Yeah, I agree. I think a balanced lineup does make a lot of sense. What do you think about the value? You mentioned David Nwaba, not projected for as much ownership as I would have thought, just 12%.
Okay.
He's reportedly going to get the LeBron matchup, which should be tough, but could also give him a shot at some peripherals just because of the usage there and, you know, the way rebounding works, could get bounced back to him. I think that's all viable stuff.
I mentioned Vonleh is the chalk at this point. I mean, on DK, it should be Deadman, but I mentioned it's still going to be Vonleh as of this writing. You know, we've got 40-something minutes left. I would think, you know, Vonleh is going to be the chalkiest value on FanDuel. I'm pretty certain.
You want to do our Family Feud game?
Sure, we can go ahead and do our Family Feud game.
So Noah Vonleh, we have at 11%, so he's not super chalky.
Really?
Yeah, people buying into my rhetoric against him yesterday. They were like, it didn't work yesterday in a revenge game, but today, Noah Vonleh, you bastard, we're going to get you. We're all coming for you. I do have a couple Vonleh lineups tonight, though, because I won't let it happen again. No, sir. You won't trick me twice, Noah Vonleh. But here, we got the top 5 guys. So we're gonna have Eddie do guess the top 5. No particular order, and I'll tell you if you're right or not.
Okay, what site particular are we talking here?
We're doing DK. But,
okay. Just top 5 guys, full slate on DK. I'm just going to tap on the DK lineup I was futzing with.
To be clear, though, you are right about Vonleh on FanDuel.
Yeah,
that's 30% on FanDuel.
He's 30% on FanDuel. Okay, I thought he said it was 11% on FanDuel, and I was like, really? I've completely
11%
confused
DK, 30%
here.
on FanDuel.
Okay. Okay, so the DK guys I feel comfortable with, looking at the lineup I was toying with. I'm pretty sure these two are definitely good. And then this one, depending how recently updated we get. So the two that I'm pretty sure are going to be good in the top 5 would be Jimmy Butler.
You are correct. He's number 2 at 22%.
Okay. And I'm fine with that. That's about the right number. I do think the ceiling is capped a little bit, dealing with I guess really the ceiling isn't capped. I mean, it's a New Orleans game, but you know, the usage has been concerning with him in you know, every game but one, really, alongside this Philadelphia team. But that's so cheap, and the matchup is pretty sexy. You kind of have to like him at 7,100. And Wendell Carter Jr. is the other one I'm pretty sure gets there.
He is out of the top 5 now. He is in the top 10, but he is out of the top 5.
Interesting.
So that's a big X.
All right. I'll say Dwayne Dedman. He may not be there yet, but he should end up there.
It's number 7. So another 2 X's, third one, and you're out.
Oh, we're doing it that way.
Yeah, we're doing full Family Feud style. We would need graphics and noises and one day.
Tyreek Evans?
Yes, number 1. Ding, number 1, 27%. People not afraid of Tyreek after he's kind of bombed out twice in a row. Not bombed out, but middling.
He was a monster the game before that, but yeah, I figured people would stick there. That's good on you, not getting too reactionary there. This is tough on a slate this size to just raw dog the top 5, and I bet all these guys are like low 20s, right? Like Tyreek maybe gets 25 or something, but
yeah, the top 5 are the only guys currently projected for above 20%.
Right. Okay. So I was gonna say, but I bet there's I don't know, 15 guys priced between 15 and, or with 15 to 20% ownership, or 8 guys who are at least over 13, 14. So I'm
You
really
are correct
hedging a
about
few
that.
points. Yeah. I'm wasting a lot of time here, and we should answer some questions. So I'll follow up with Pascal Siakam.
3X's. The other guys are Cody Zeller, which is a real surprise. But 4,100 versus Indiana. I guess we're expecting people favor that matchup. DeAndre Jordan, another center, and Karl Anthony Towns. Those are the 5.
All right, that's okay. That's I did not expect. Towns, at least I like. Jordan and Zeller. Like, all right, Jordan versus the Nets. I think that will actually happen. I'm really curious where we think the ownership on Zeller is going to come from there. Like, okay, we like centers versus Indiana, kind of, but that's not even like a reliable minutes situation necessarily, and that's a really interesting one for me, especially with like playing Zeller over Dedmon or Vonleh feels generally wrong to me in a tournament. But
I'm with you. I find it surprising, but
so
we're usually right. So
so
I don't know. I'm baffled.
yeah. Towns is in a really good spot on DK. FanDuel he's 10,000. I'm willing to let that go. DK is 8,800. Denver and the Timberwolves play 4 times a year, and he just barely missed 50 a couple times, but I'm pretty sure he's never missed 48 fantasy points in the last 2 years against Denver. So that's a pretty nice floor for 8,800. And with the other guys out of town, I would even project him a little higher than that. So, like, I have Towns projected for a touch over 50. And I don't think his ownership is... it's interesting. You had him top 5. I thought he was going to be around 10% owned. So I was a huge Towns fan. At 20%, I'm much less of a Towns fan. But he's been very, very consistent and handles Jokic fairly well. I would much rather play Towns than Jokic. So Towns made sense to me. I'm all about the Townies. So that's fine. That works for me.
So we have a question related to a teammate of Tyreek Evans, who has also been really a bigger beneficiary in some respects than Tyreek has been. Domantas Sabonis.
Yeah.
Appersy in the premium Slack wants to know: do you go Sabonis or Ibaka or Siakam? So a 3-way dance there.
Yeah, we already discussed. I do think I will go with Ibaka over Siakam, saving some money and saving some ownership. So that's where you go. But just raw points there, especially less likely of a blowout there. I'll actually take Sabonis. Sabonis, I mentioned before the last show, and I think he ended up being like the 4th or 5th highest owned guy. But he had significant from the Pacers without Oladipo. With Oladipo out, he picks up a really significant amount of usage and production. Just the nature of the offense, the number of fast breaks slows down dramatically. They end up in a half court, and he just ends up with the ball crushing people a ton. The number of rebounds he's in place for goes up so much. So his production just goes way, way up. So it's really going to be interesting to see, where the ownership lands on each of those guys. But it would be either Sabonis or Ibaka for me. And it would probably fall down to correlation for me. Probably Ibaka a little more often than not, because I expect myself to have more, say, Dwayne Dedmon than, say, Cody Zeller. So
I agree. I think that makes sense. Also, our guy, I'm sorry, I lost your name, buddy. Jack Perry. Jack Perry, guy, is pretty smart in the YouTube chat. Zeller got 30-plus minutes the last 2 games because of Willie Hernangomez being out. So that is why they would put Zeller as being a better play.
And I didn't know the status on Willie. I thought he might have been back today, but maybe that's where I got confused.
He apparently he's still out, which I was also not aware.
That's where somehow I got incorrect news there, where I thought he was going to be coming back.
There's not a big ceiling though. You had like 35 minutes versus Philly, and Zeller put up 26.75. 32 minutes versus Boston, 24 points. I'm not excited about that.
Yeah, it's especially if he's going to be that chalky. I don't think I would jump on that. But 32 and 35 minutes the last 2 games, and just Biombo backing him up at this point. And even MKG is out for a while still, so that helps because they actually had some MKG at the 5 lineups. So no Willie and no MKG is the second part that makes that actually really nice. So I'm fine with that. That's a pretty strong cash play. It's probably a better cash play than say Noah Vonleh at the exact same price. Because Noah Vonleh might get 36 minutes, he might get 6 minutes. I have no idea what the hell they're going to do there today. So,
and the Raptors lineup is in. Jonas is starting along with Siakam, Danny Green, Kyle Lowry, and Fred VanVleet. I assume you're going to be team Jonas right now.
Team Jonas, let's go, light him up. Just It's not like when he starts, all of a sudden he gets 32 damn minutes. So you don't have to get rid of your Ibaka. Your Ibaka ownership's going to get really nice now, so it doesn't change a lot for me there. It does pull down my minutes projection for him by a few, but those guys being out could certainly, chance of some Jonas next to Ibaka time helping out a little bit there. Most of those big minutes are going to flow to those three guys. So, but yeah, Jonas, anytime you're looking at him in a situation like this, where we expect him to get, a lot of time, Dedmon is actually a pretty competent defender, picks up some blocks, does some other nice things. But, with that news coming out 33 minutes before lock, apparently, somewhere around there. It's apparently about 5 minutes old, so 38 minutes before lock. Definitely like getting some exposure to Jonas because he does have a very big upside. I'd probably rather play him on FanDuel over Dedmon, for example, just for the ownership. But, I'm Team Jonas whenever there's a chance of him getting there, and, Hawks is nice. So
yeah, if there ever were a time for him to get there and have one of those outlier games where he hasn't had one in a while, this is definitely the spot for it.
Yeah, his name is Jonas.
So we had a question, a written pack asking over under 32 fantasy points for Lonzo. I don't know that you need necessarily don't exact over under, but what do you think about Lonzo's prospects? He's pretty cheap. I think he's gotten some talk. He's just been not good, which is obviously not the best. You generally want to play guys who are good. But he's not been looking great, not having the ball in his hands quite as much. How do you feel about Lonzo's prospects tonight, given that he's pretty cheap?
I think it's just fine in tournaments. I imagine his ownership still hangs out in the 6, 8, 10% range. And, the matchup is about as stellar as it gets. I do think another guy who has generally underperformed, he's always going to be frenetic, but and his shot has been obviously just hot garbage. But the matchup is really solid, and at some point he's going to turn around and have a big game. No reason it can't be here. So I like Lonzo in tournaments just fine. Wouldn't touch him in cash under any circumstances, but I like Lonzo quite a bit.
And while we're talking about the Lakers, we talked about LeBron too. But again, our friends at Thrive Fantasy are doing a prop-based daily fantasy sports app where you're tracking props, competing against other players, and generally trying to figure out who's going to outperform each other in a couple of different categories: points, rebounds, assists. It's a lot of stuff where if you're playing fantasy, it's a pretty easy transition. One other prop that they have at Thrive Fantasy today, Brandon Ingram is getting 2.5 points in a matchup head-to-head with Kyle Kuzma. If you were getting 2 points, 2.5 points with Brandon Ingram, who would you go with? I would go Ingram.
Yeah, I would stick with Ingram here too. I don't think that we necessarily have a permanent demotion to the extent that we saw Kuzma cede minutes to Kentavious Caldwell-Pope over the last couple games. Someone else who I've been talking about, I think more than most people for a couple weeks, to look, he's eventually going to make a shot or two, and he's a pretty decent defender, can pick up a couple steals in a game. At some point he's going to pay off but minimum price, and he's been pretty good 2 games in a row. So not surprised if that's where you can send him to see those minutes sort of slide from Kuzma over to KCP. So yeah, I would be inclined to give a couple points and tank Ingram there. Close, but yeah, I would take BI there.
Yeah, I mean, the shots and minutes seem more secure for Ingram. I actually don't mind Ingram as an overall fantasy play tonight, but I think in a head-to-head game, I'd feel like Kuzma's losing minutes to Caldwell-Pope. Like, he's losing minutes to Hart, it looks like. It seems like they want to go other ways besides Kuzma, and that worries me a little bit. So at least Ingram, will be on the floor.
Yeah, I think that's the case. I'm with you.
Let's see. Thoughts on De'Aaron Fox? Disappointing a lot of folks in another matchup, again, which I think he's performed pretty well in once this year. What would you do with him tonight?
Yeah, I like De'Aaron Fox a lot. 6,400 is still just well underpriced for what we expect out of him with how well he's been doing just this whole year. The guy with the most secure minutes on this team. They played almost opening day, maybe first week at some point. The Kings and the Jazz got together, and Jazz won that game, I think, but it was a close contest, and it was a game where you got good production out of all of these starters for the Kings. You got, we'll load the game up, but I remember looking at it earlier today briefly and watching some of the tape on it, and De'Aaron Fox had 41 DK points in that game. He had 21 and 7, 4 rebounds, 3 steals, shot 8 of 16 from the field. And this is a Jazz team. I mean, this Jazz team has been bad. Like, if there was a team that has underperformed for me on the year versus how I expected them to do, it's the Jazz. Like, I thought this Jazz team was going to be incredible. They were basically just bringing back the team from last year healthier, who had been incredibly good defensively and just got rid of a couple guys who were the only bad defensive guys left on the team. I really thought the Jazz were going to absolutely dominate people this year. They got destroyed. They lost to the Mavs by 50 before getting blown out again last game.
In the playoffs, and all of a sudden they just look like an entirely different team.
They better, because if they look anything like this team, they're in a lot of trouble. But that gives us, and this is a Kings team, so I actually like this game a lot. I mean, for the Kings, Shumpert went down in price because Jazz matchup, I guess, is the theory, though Jazz have been playing faster than we expect, and the defense has been worse than you expect. He's 3,600 on DK. He's repeatedly busted out some big games. Buddy Hield is too cheap because of the matchup. Willie Cauley-Stein at 5,700 is probably the one I'm least inclined towards, because there is a real, micro issue there. He has, fallen ass backwards into some decent games against Gobert, but that's at least a legitimately tough spot, and I don't think the odds of him putting in a ceiling game are great. But all the other guys have all the ceiling in the world, and De'Aaron Fox at 6,400. I would project well north of 30, and 6,400 makes that pretty appealing. With there is an upside on top of it. Again, he got 41 against this Jazz team not that long ago. So yeah, I like De'Aaron Fox quite a bit. I would have no issue with someone running out some Fox, running out some Bagley, running out some Cauley-Stein, running out some Bielitsa even, as his prices started to decrease proportionately to the amount of time he's getting. And then this is a nice pace-up spot for these Jazz. So a lot of these guys, I like Joe Ingles, who's 57 and 53, I think are the numbers on Joe Ingles. There's a real ceiling there. His price is just down from shooting really badly for a while there. And this is the third time this year I said I like Joe Ingles, and he mauled the first two. So that means anything to you. I like Joe Ingles in this spot again. Donovan Mitchell, will get this figured out and turned around a little bit. He hasn't shot that well, but massive ceiling game possibility there when he shows the willingness to take 35 shots in a game like he did this week. Rubio isn't. We like Rubio when his price randomly starts with a 5, but in the low 6s, he's a very interesting pivot off De'Aaron Fox. He'll be even well lower owned than that. No reason he can't have a perfectly good game here. Derek Favors at 4,500 as pivot off of Dedmon / Vonleh, that cheap power forward center type category. And again, if you look across the ball in that first game, Favors had 32, Ingles had 40, Mitchell had 34, Gobert had 44. Like that's it's a shame Gobert's price of all the guys on the Jazz, oddly, he was the only one who really spiked. He's up at the 78, 79. He was 7,000 last game. I'd have been pretty excited about 7,000 Rudy Gobert. He's been very, very good against the Kings, very, very good against Willie Cauley-Stein, and still someone I haven't played. I will pull the log up as we speak, but he's doing mid-40s basically every game, and that's nothing wrong with that for 8K. Very similar to, say, Towns is someone who I think can really put on a ceiling there. I like Wendell Carter a lot. His matchup is superlative. People have talked him down all day. Like, the minutes are down. The minutes are down because they're the Bulls. They just keep getting absolutely blown out. And in full game season to play 30 or 32 minutes. So I like Wendell Carter Jr. a lot. I like Dwayne Dedmon a lot. But I'm no issues with Gobert or Towns or obviously a lot of these other guys. Why is that not loading?
Our old pal Emac, who I just want to give a quick shout out to because he's going to be live tomorrow doing the pre-Thanksgiving show for NFL. So thankfully I get a day off because of Emac. He's going to be doing it with our boy Nolan Kelly, who's been on a couple of the On the Contrary shows. Nolan, very good, smart football guy. So go tune in for Emac and Nolan tomorrow. But he brings up, is slow-mo a trap tonight? And I actually want to run something by you because I saw this tweet before we went on from Justin Fan, who's a very smart guy over at Fantasy Labs, and they do good stuff over there too. We all do great things.
Is it all the revenge?
It is. Yeah. I want to know which of these games. Let's go one by one. But which ones did you say? Just say yes or no. Which one are you into and which one are you not? LeBron versus Cavs.
Yes, I think there is something there.
KD versus Thunder.
Yes.
Drew versus the Sixers.
He's been really good against the Sixers. I will say, yes. Above average. He's got his couple stints with that team, but he's been very good against the Sixers. So. Oddly enough, I'll say no, but he's played above his expectation against Philadelphia in the past. I like
Yeah, I
them all.
worry about the usage there a little bit, just because I think they're going to be able to get a lot of open shots in a variety of places. But they
Yeah.
have been bad versus guards who can pick up high usage, and Drew's the only guy who fits that criteria in that team right now.
Yeah, certainly they have some dead air out there with Frank Jackson moving into a larger role on that team, but each one more often can disappear a little bit. And we're $8,100 when Elf is still out is going to be a really nice price for Drew as long as you got it.
How about Kyle Anderson versus the Spurs?
No, I don't believe in that at all. He got paid. I don't think he's. I mean, I guess you could have a thing where, you know, oh, you didn't match the offer. But apologies. Note from my wife. Yeah. So I'll go with no on Kyle Anderson though. He got paid.
Jordan Clarkson versus the Lakers, Larry Nance versus the Lakers, and David Nwaba versus the Lakers.
Clarkson may be the other two. No, Nance was perfectly fine to end up there. Nwaba's understood he's not an asset. So.
Aw. You're an asset to me, David Nwaba. I believe in you.
He's fine. He's fine. He's fine. I'm not gonna.
I like he's a spark plug. I root for the Bulls, sort of, not really, but like I care about them still a little bit because I was a Jordan guy and I feel like it just kind of stuck with me.
Sure.
And Nwaba's like a feisty guy who hustles.
I
and
like
think
his game. He gives you that Dellavedova turn on. He's
yeah.
I'm in that.
More athletic Dellavedova, but that's a good comp. Isaiah Kanan versus the Bulls.
No, although he is starting again, so you like that. He's starting and playing the Bulls. Those are two very good things for your production, but I don't think he gets particularly geared up. I mean, he's not. I don't think that's a team where if he gets going and starts gussy, takes a lot of shot, that goes over well. I think when Devin Booker is like waving for the ball and not getting it because Kanan is out there trying to dominate, I think he gets yanked right the hell out of the game. So I don't think that does much.
And last but not least, Pat Connaughton versus the Blazers, the matchup everybody's been waiting for.
No, I don't think so. Like, I don't know. It's cute and everything, but no, I don't think. I mean, these are guys where even if you say, wow, they're going to produce 10 extra, it's like, really? Pat Connaughton's going to go from 18 to 20 or like, percent extra there. We're talking about LeBron where it's like, all right, he goes from 55 to 61. Like, okay. That's a little bit more relevant, but I predict David Nwaba for 16 fantasy points. If he gets really gussied up and wasn't playing hard in the past, which again we were just talking about how he's plays hard all the time. Okay, I don't know.
It's fair. Let's see, can you ask Eddie if he thinks Quinn Cook starts tonight?
I don't. I wouldn't be shocked, but I think this is a matchup where they're going to want to keep slightly better defensive forces on the court here. So I think they will actually stick with Iguodala. If you want my best guess there, that is obviously that hasn't worked as well as they would have liked. They've been struggling, but I don't think that's where they make the change.
Okay, that's fair. Drop your questions in the premium Slack. By the way, we do hit those first. I'm taking a look at YouTube now. Again, more than either ors, guys, because the either ors are not the most fun thing in the world. We're just giving you a pick. It's not the sexiest thing.
Let's see. So other guys I want to talk about real quick. I like JJ Redick a lot. He should be good in this position, and he has been. The matchup looks very good for him. The pace looks very good for him. The price is still lower than it should be. Was good against the Pellies last time. There's nothing about this matchup that doesn't look good for JJ Redick. He's obviously sort of a scoring dependent commodity, so not the safest thing in the world, but I do think it is a spot where he carries that ceiling that he can have. We talked about Lowry already. Devin Booker, obviously, on FanDuel is almost a pricing error against Chicago. I don't know what that's about, but he's one of the best points per dollar plays on that slate. Someone else I want to talk about there. I like Darren Collison, and I think they want him out there a significant amount. So I think you actually get 33 minutes of Darren Collison here as opposed to the 26 we've been getting recently. Some of that is blowout, some of that is other stuff. But with the Super Kemba doing his thing, I think DC is somebody I'd be interested in taking a shot on tonight, especially if you're not playing Reek in whatever lineup that is. Ready for questions, just thinking about some guys off the top of my head. I don't know if they've been mentioned enough.
Let's see. Actually, here's a question about Dallas. Dallas is an interesting spot. Luka Doncic was projected to have higher ownership today. He shot 20 games for the first time the last two games. I like him. I'm interested in him. I don't know that I got enough of him in, but how do you feel about, you mentioned you're not super into DeAndre Jordan, but how do you feel about Luka and the rest of the team?
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate DeAndre. The spot is obviously very strong. I don't hate Jared Allen again. By the way, tonight we've talked about this. His performance when he can hang out by the basket the whole game is generally very, very good, and he's going to be underpriced when he can do that. And when he has to run around and chase, Brook Lopez or whomever, he gets much, much worse. DeAndre Jordan is not going to spend that much time away from the basket, so. I like him a fair amount. Doncic is a great tournament play. Obviously, we like him a little more on DK, but produces in enough ways. I don't think this is a matchup that he should have any trouble getting what he wants here. So, we really need the injury news here. Like, I think he's a very nice tournament play right now. You're hoping that there's no Dennis Smith Jr. and that there's no JJ Barea, and then all of a sudden he's out there with Brunson and Dorian Finney-Smith for 30 minutes each, and that's really exciting because those guys have no idea how to score a basketball. So that's certainly what you're hoping for.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Let's see what else is interesting. Oh, sorry, questions are moving fast here. What are your overall thoughts on Booker? Do you feel like he's affected at all by Isaiah Canaan being back in the lineup, or do you think there's any sort of trickle down of Canaan just taking a little bit of ball handling time off of Booker?
Yes, I obviously it makes Canaan playable. Second, I do think I would prefer Booker a little bit playing point guard. Like, I think it makes his floor safer and just adds all sorts of, double upside with assists, and there's all sorts of interesting things that can come out of that situation. So yes, I would have been even more excited about Devin Booker in the event that he was playing point guard. Obviously puts Bridges back to the bench, especially on FanDuel. Trevor Ariza is an undersold commodity. Like, the ceiling is not massive. I think he's gotten over 40 fantasy points once all year. In the first week, he had like a 44 or something like that. But the matchup, again, is just absolutely exceptional. 4,800 is a pretty good price for him. And he's got, I'll say 7 or 8 games over 30 this year. Like, he's, put together some decent games. And so that represents, I'll say, about 40% of his games. No, a little less than that, but or a little more than that, actually. But he's, this would seem like a spot in which he could certainly put up a decent number. So I would probably project Trevor Ariza for somewhere in the 27 to 28 range. That feels pretty good for $4,800, especially. So, and again, just the team generally underpriced on FanDuel, so that's not that surprising. That goes all the way down to DeAndre Ayton at 7,000. Like on FanDuel, where centers usually are dealing with a pretty significant tax, he really isn't, and that's a fine number where we haven't seen. If you go back first, 10 days of the season, we repeatedly were getting 45 fantasy points out of Ayton, and it's fallen off a bit. We're getting more in the 30-35 range for a while now, but there's been tougher matchups. The minutes have been sketchy for not always direct reasons. So I do think I would not be surprised if you randomly get 45 again out of him. So some pretty decent interest in him.
Saz Crib asking the premium Slack thoughts on the Nuggets peripheral pieces like Murray, Harris, and Millsap. Who has the best matchup?
Yeah, I looked at them, but I do think they are all guys who go undersold in what ends up being a pretty stellar matchup. With Minnesota, obviously. Between those guys right now, I would probably in tournaments prefer the most to run Harris, then Murray, then Millsap. Between those three guys, I do think it benefits. Yeah, this should work out the best for Gary Harris in the spot at their prices. I probably have the highest upside on the other two guys, oddly enough. But Harris probably my favorite of those three guys. Big Gary Harris fan, like the way he plays ball.
I agree. He's my favorite guy on that side too. Just the price makes sense, and he's been shooting enough shots to get there. He just hasn't been hitting them, so yep. I'm fine with him.
Yep.
Let's talk about a game that nobody probably wants to talk about, but I think we probably should hit it because there could be some contrarian value there. Memphis at San Antonio, an under 100 adjusted pace in this matchup, a team total under 200, which is not very common in the NBA. Would you take any pieces from this game, and if so, what would you take?
I would have very little of this game, and I don't do that a lot. I'm a big fan of trying to find ownership pieces, but this is a San Antonio team with really concentrated production, and the prices on those guys aren't. So, like, if you gave me $7,000 LaMarcus Aldridge or $8,000 DeMar DeRozan, I would try to jump at it. Probably Rudy Gay is the first piece on the Spurs I'm looking at there. And then, for the Grizzlies, it'd be probably Kyle Anderson first, and then Marc Gasol, and then Conley. But, yeah, I'd be many, many lineups in before I took shots on those guys. You'll get them at very nice ownership, but there's a real chance this game is just a mess. So, yeah, very, very little interest for me. I do think there are just other spots we feel better about, and the guys just aren't priced enough to make it terribly advantageous.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think I have a little interest in Gasol and Conley and Jackson just because the minutes are there, and I think they've shown some upside. And also, the Spurs have shown some upside defensively, just allowing teams to have
Green has looked really
games.
Good. You can get JaMychal Green at $4,100. He's been very good 2 games in a row. He has, top of my head, something like 22 minutes, 32 fantasy points, 15 minutes, 27 fantasy points. Like, he's looked really, really good. He's
so you're a convert. Your team, JaMychal Green. All he had to do was break his jaw for you to love him.
Yeah. I'm glad you remember back that far. I don't remember what happened on that day. I think I was right that day, but it's come around.
I think you were right, but it wasn't. It was close. It was close though. I'm Team JaMychal always.
Yeah,
can you ask Eddie how many minutes he has for Jonas and Dedmon?
Yeah, Dedmon I have at 32 right now. Jonas, I will be very ambitious and say 23.
Okay, people talking football in the YouTube chat. So back to the premium Slack. We tried YouTube. You're talking football. We're lost there. Any worries about Nurkic on a back-to-back?
If we're worried about guys on a back-to-back tonight, that's there's a few coming off games last night. I think 4 teams played last night, so there's a few. No, I'm trying to remember how many minutes he did play last night. I don't actually recall that off the top of my head, if I'm being honest. So I will look. Something you got to look at once in a time. Question is it worth it for Jusuf Nurkic? 30 minutes last night? Not
kind of prefer Brook on the other side, to be honest.
Not overly interesting. Talk to me about Brook. Go ahead.
Look at his game log versus Portland. For some reason, he has just had monster games, or not even monster games, just at least a steady game each time versus Portland. I don't know why. I also think Brooks just had a couple of good games, within the last 10 too, that aren't against Portland. So I don't have a ton of Brook. I think I'm a little bit above the field, not crazy there, but he's a good value on DK, and he's shown 40-point upside.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I mean, if you go back far enough, Brook was doing good against Portland because he wanted to make his brother look bad. But I'll say, Nurkic is a really strong player. Like, his price just hasn't come up enough for the fact that he now has minute security. He's basically Jonas Valanciunas constantly getting time after some early concern that he was going to, cede a consistent role to Zach out there. He's really consistently gotten his. So I think you have to like Nurkic. Obviously, you're not thrilled that he's on a back-to-back, but 6,700 on DK is just too cheap. I mean, his last, I don't know, we'll game log watch the last 5 games. 43, 55, 28, 45, 42. That's pretty sexy there. And the 28 was in a good match. They were mostly all good matchups, in fairness. This is a pretty good streak. Boston, which isn't thrilling, but then Lakers, Minnesota, Washington, and the Knicks. Those are some pretty nice games there. So that's a little high, but he's 6,700. So 40 feels pretty good, and he's got that 4 out of 5 times. He's averaging north of 40 in there. So, I like Nurkic a lot. But, yeah, you should have some concern on the back-to-back. Little more likely that, Collins comes in and does some more mop-up work. Would probably reduce his minutes projection for me by 2 or so. But, not going to sway me a ton there. That makes me a little more interested on, FanDuel, you save like $700 going to Ayton. DK, it's $200 one side or the other. So there, I'm fairly ambivalent on what to do there.
All right, we're in the home stretch here, so we'll speed around some either ors. So drop them in, queue them up. We'll go through them as fast as we can, rather. Collins, Teagan, Lowry, or Westbrook, Kanan, and Millsap for Rinpack in the premium Slack.
Collins, Teagan, Lowry.
Jerebko or Sarge for a FanDuel GPP. Got to get this win. Has Russell Westbrook and Millsap to try to correlate.
I'll go Sarge then. Westbrook has been good against the modern Warriors. I mean, he has just looking at point total, so I didn't have any time to game log this or watch any tape on this, but his last, we'll say, 7 games against the Warriors, he's got 5 out of 7 58 or more, 4 out of 7 67 or more, 3 out of 7 72 or more. That's 3 out of 7 72 or more is kind of exciting there.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Covington or Warren in a FanDuel GPP if you already have Booker.
Yeah, then Covington for me. I'm fine with that. I'm surprised they're priced that close to each other. Covington's that high on FanDuel because Warren is $7K. I don't know Covington's price offhand, but 66. Yeah, okay, it's only $400 less. But yeah, at that point I'd be more inclined to run Covington out there. Not thrilled with that matchup for him, but I think if you already have Booker, that's just enough for me to turn it that way for what's also much, much lower ownership. Like TJ Warren, while he is a really good field goal percentage guy, if you're looking at like season-long leagues, will not shoot 65% for the year. Like that number is going to come down. So he is overproducing a little bit, but really, really stellar matchup there. So raw points, you have to stick with Warren, but in a tournament, I would probably run Covington and hope and pray for steals and threes.
Does McCollum's 40 bomb mean anything with the matchup, or was it just a big game?
Well, both. It was a big game, but it's the odds of that happening are greater against the Bucks than a few other teams. The Bucks have a very uneven defense where they tend to give up a lot of production around the rim and from the mid-range. The former of those probably just because Brolo isn't terribly good at rim protection, and Giannis frequently ends up around the periphery, so they end up giving up a lot of bank shots in that. And just they do a really good job of sitting on the line, which just opens up a lot of 18-footers through switches and the like. So it has a lot to do with the matchup. So certainly going back to McCollum isn't crazy. I'm assuming he's still priced in the high 6s. But yeah, that works just fine for me. Again, I like a lot of guys a little less, a little more. It's obviously just a huge night. There's tons of great plays. So that was not apropos of nothing. So.
Is Blake a good play in GPPs on DK? I like Blake a lot. I think he's going to be very low owned, and I think you could run him back with Chris Paul as a pretty good value, or Harden. So I'm actually very intrigued by Blake. But what do you think, Eddie?
It's tough for me to go there tonight. Like you're excited, I think, inherently, and it's normal to be like, wow, we have Blake Griffin at. I'm sure he's sitting at 4% owned, and that's pretty nice. Where you're thinking about getting a guy who has shown an 80-point ceiling this year at that kind of ownership. But this is a Houston team that is playing really, really slower than any team Mike D'Antoni has ever coached. And running into, they still have a few guys they can roll out there who do a pretty good job of defending Blake or just about anyone else, whether or not he's going to see little bits of Ennis and some Gary Clark and lots of PJ Tucker. And there's a number of guys who do a pretty good job on Blake Griffin there. So I think he's just fine in tournaments. He's better on FanDuel, by the way, where he's just proportionally much better priced. But you're bucking for a really ceiling sort of game out of him to make you happy at that price of $9,500 in a situation where I think it's not the most likely thing in the world. So I think he's fine in tournaments just because you're getting a guy who has a massive ceiling, really low owned. But whenever you pick a guy, you're also not picking other guys, and that sounds ridiculous, but whenever you take a stud tonight, you're not taking the other 6. So every upvote is also a downvote against other guys, and that has to be taken into case. So, you need 60 out of Blake to be really happy with him tonight, or 50 you're fine, but you're hoping for a giant number, and this would be an odd spot for that giant number to come up. So, okay. I think he's appropriately, I think he's fine. I wouldn't talk someone out of it. I wouldn't advocate for it.
Yeah, you know what? I think when you explain that, I think that does make a little bit more sense about why he'd be low. And he's at 1% right now in our projection. Yeah, so okay. I think, do you need one lineup, 2 lineups to get there? So that's more than enough. Yeah. Westbrook and Van Vliet or Bledsoe and Fox for a FanDuel GPP?
Bertans is in, by the way, which sounds like shouldn't be that important, but it even thins out that match a little further. Like if Bertans was out, you were looking at conceivably couple extra minutes for Aldridge and Gay. Now that's gone by the wayside. What was the last 2x2 there?
Westbrook and Van Vliet or Bledsoe and Fox for a FanDuel GPP?
Bledsoe's in a really interesting spot there. Well, I'll go with Westbrook and Van Vliet.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Bledsoe and Fox seems a little more, I don't know, like a little more low owned. So I think there's
Yeah,
some value in
it's
that
very
there.
close for me.
Aaron Holiday or Moutier for a punt on FanDuel on the GPP.
Moutier.
What do you think? We talked about this earlier, but do you think Collins is good with 25 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, I think if he plays exactly 25 minutes, I'd probably project him for 28.5 fantasy points. So I think you feel okay about that. And there is a ceiling on top of that. It's not thrilling at this point. He's a fine tournament play, but not a great one. Part of the reason that he made a lot of sense before is you were hoping that you would randomly get 32 out of him, and that's apparently almost certainly not going to happen now. So.
Would you go Sabonis and Westbrook or Davis and Quinn Cook?
Absent any news, Dennis Smith will play. JJ Barea will play. So
Powell's still out.
That just jacks up everything. Powell's still out. Sabonis, Quinn Cook. What was the rest? Sorry.
Sabonis and Westbrook or Davis and Quinn Cook?
I'd play Sabonis and Westbrook.
I agree. I think that's a pretty easy one. We don't know if Quinn Cook's starting, and even still, not the greatest matchup for him.
Yep.
Corey Joseph, Lowry, Vonleh, or Van Vliet, Collison, and Siakam for FanDuel cash.
For cash, I'll go with the second one.
Russell Westbrook and McGee, or Sexton and Embiid for a FanDuel GPP.
Westbrook and McGee. You're not going to get me to play Colin Sexton in a GPP lineup until he ever has a game that was good in a GPP.
Sabonis and Trae Young, or Vonleh and Towns?
Vonleh and Towns.
Drummond or Jokic?
I think I go with Drummond there. That's really close for me, but yeah, I would go. It's really tough. No, I gotta reverse myself. I will take Jokic there. Yeah, I gotta take Jokic.
Jerebko, Turner, or Zeller for a DK GPP?
I'm wondering which Turner that is. Miles.
Oh wait, no, 4,100. No, it's Evan Turner.
It's
Never mind.
Evan. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll go Jerebko then.
I'd go Zeller. I think we talked me into Zeller.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. That's don't hate the matchup, and just the time has been really solid, and still no MKG. So, that's really close for me. I will go Jerebko barely, but Zeller's been good.
Vonleh or Zeller for DK cash?
Cash is definitely Zeller. I mean, that is one of the most crystal clear cash versus tournament plays ever. Like, Vonleh definitely has a higher upside. Like, the odds of getting 50 out of Vonleh are probably like 4 times the odds of getting 50 out of Zeller, but the odds of getting 20 out of Zeller are higher than the odds of getting 20 out of Vonleh because of all the uncertainty there and the number of backups, etc. So, certainly in cash, it's Zeller by several steps.
Evans and Finney-Smith, or Redick and Zeller for cash? No site given.
Redick and Zeller for me.
Lamb or Ingles, or Lamb? Oh, what? One of these. Lamb, Ingles, Evans, or Barnes? Which would you pick for a DK GPP?
Ingles.
Any thoughts on Ben Simmons?
I think he's fine. I do think we're going to have more of the poor games than the great ones from this point forward. I do think we end up having a bit more of an issue with him than we've seen. I do think, Butler will trend up from what we've seen, and he'll trend down a little bit. But with him in the mid-8s, there's still certainly upside to be had there. And I really obviously like the matchup. So, strong play. I like it, don't love it, but I like Ben Simmons quite a bit.
I don't think this one locked yet, so we'll answer it, but I'm not actually sure. Drew or Lowry on DK?
I would have taken Lowry in both. I would have played Lowry in cash and in tournaments, but it would have been close for me. I like Drew Holiday quite a bit, but I would have slightly deferred towards Kyle Lowry in both cash and tournaments.
All right. Well, Thanksgiving is a time for family, Eddie. So you know what that means. It's time to hear what Daddy likes.
I will do that real quick. I'm dealing with a child coming home, and apparently the door upstairs is locked. So I'm just trying to make sure that I don't have a frigid.
Okay, no problem. That's also an important daddy thing to deal
banging
with.
on the door there. So yeah, that was. But yeah, let's do some daddy like while we wait for this. I think we had only 2 7:00 games, so it will not be the world's largest game of daddy like, but I will certainly get through some of this real quick. Looking at the
While you pull that up, David Riggs, you haven't answered any question I've asked in about a month, yet I still hit the like button. You should hit that like button. We appreciate that. But if you want to get your questions answered, use that promo code live before lock.
Nice.
Get into the premium Slack. Premium Slack gets first crack. I mean, that's just the way it's got to be, so we can make the paying customers happy. So we do really appreciate you guys on YouTube, especially you, David Riggs. We're sorry. It's not a deliberate thing. Nobody's getting spurned here. But we got to try to balance it all out with the analysis and the questions from the premium people. And then when we can, we jump into YouTube. So it's mostly a timing thing, but we're sorry.
All right. Here we go. Tyreek Evans, 28%. That seems about right. Ben Simmons, 15%. Seems good. Cody Zeller, 13%. If we were wondering where that came in at the end of the day. Nikola Mirotic, 13. Drew Holiday, 12. Jimmy Butler, 12. Domantas Sabonis, 11. Joel Embiid, 10. Daddy like. I like him at 10%. Anthony Davis, 10. Almost identically own those two guys. I do like Embiid a little bit more there. Thad Young at 8.7. That's fine. Wilson Chandler at 8. Sure, but, again. Julius Randle at 7.5. Even in tough matchups has shown some massive upside, so I think that's interesting. We'll end up with a fair amount of Embiid because of where the matchups roll there, so that could be tough. J Lamb 7, JJ Redick 6, Bojan 5.5, Kemba Walker 5. Brave Souls paying that price. Batum 5, Aaron Holiday 5, Each Moore 4, Darren Collison 2.3. I like that a lot. Daddy likes that a lot, I should say. Corey Joseph 2%, Miles Turner 1.7, Marvin the Martian 1.6, Mike Muscala 1.2, TJ McConnell over 1%. I would not have seen that coming. Tony Parker, no one between 0.27 and 1%. That's a little weird. Tony Parker 0.27. Miles Bridges 0.16, Malik Monk 0.15, Landry Shamet 0.14, Wesley Johnson 0.09, Darius Miller 0.06, Bismack Biyombo 0.04. I'll actually give a daddy like for Bismack Biyombo at 0.04 because of the paucity of bigs on that team right now. Frank Kaminsky 0.04, Doug McDermott 0.04. Doug McDermott is never the answer. Amir Johnson 0.04, Ian Clark 0.03, Furkan Korkmaz 0.03, Frank Jackson 0.02 I like, Dwayne Bacon 0.02, Czech Diallo 0.01, Victor Oladipo, 0.01%. Congratulations. You played yourself.
There you go. All right, so I think you got to attend to some family stuff on that end. So let's call it a wrap there. It's Thanksgiving. We all got things to do, but we appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in. Throw us a like. Check that promo, or that link rather, for Thrive Fantasy. Thrive Fantasy, again, a presenting sponsor now. My dog is coughing in the background. She's so excited. But they're a great company, and they're doing some stuff with us in pretty much every show. So keep your eyes peeled for our picks on those to hopefully get you going. And check that deposit bonus on Thrive Fantasy. Getting $10 for every 10, 20 for every 50, and 50 for every 100 plus is a very good deal. So go check that out now. bit.ly/ThriveLBL. Any parting words, Eddie, before we go on a holiday break here for a day?
No, sorry I got distracted there for a minute, but shit happens. No, looking forward to a day off. Everyone have a great Thanksgiving. Stuff yourselves. Drive safely. And I'm thankful for being able to work with you every day, Chris.
Oh, I'm thankful for you, Eddie. This has been a fun experience where I appreciate Eddie. I appreciate everybody. It's good vibes. Thanksgiving, bring good vibes to your family, everybody. It'll make your lives better. Just put all the shit aside. Everybody have a good holiday. We appreciate you, and enjoy the holiday, everyone. Get nice and fat. See you again soon.
All right. Bye-bye.